I should explain that I'm a seal biologist, I'm not a statistician, and a lot of my work focuses on seal ecology and understanding the sort of factors that contribute to things like reproductive success within the population. So my interest in using the techniques like photo ID are really to get handles on the sort of population parameters that apply to the animals of interest. So Lex has already mentioned, sorry, before I move on, I should point out that actually we have a slightly different problem in the UK about seal numbers. We probably have more in the bottom of the picture here than you have in the whole of the Sima region. It's, as I say, it's a different sort of scale of problem. So Lex has already mentioned the paper that that deals with the extract compare software on the North Rona female grey seal pictures. It's based on a long-term data set for female grey seals at one of the study colonies that we work at North Rona in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, one of the oldest studied seal colonies probably in the world. The thing to bear in mind is that these are long-lived animals. The females live probably in excess of 30 years, and all our data are based on individual-based observations from the same animals who display site fidelity, come back to the same places year after year, and therefore they give us really high-quality information on both on breeding success and on the sort of measurements that we can take during the time that they are ashore. So, for example, in the paper that we talked about, we were able to derive apparent survival estimates for the population using Lex's method. However, one of the limitations to this is that the way the photographs were taken are literally to take them from fixed positions. So this is the island where we work. This is the view from the hides at the top of the slope looking out on the northern peninsula of Fanish. This is typically the view that you get from a hide looking down. Some of the people in the audience will actually remember this. Here's a typical photograph of a female grey seal, and you can see that most of the pattern that's actually used to recognize individuals is displayed around the head, neck and flank regions. So you really have to get a view of that part of the animal to allow you to make identifications. And the thing that actually limits all of this, of course, is that we're limited to the observation site to get those images. If I take you to the other main colony that we use for these studies, it's the Isle of May in the Firth of Forth on the east coast of Scotland. And here again, we use photo ID to estimate survival, and we can also add extra information to that by recording where the photographs are actually taken. So where you take a photograph of a seal, if you link that to the location of the seal, you get a map which shows here, superimposed on the image of the island, all the little dots are locations where we have photographed grey seals in this particular season. And you can see that it comes from the south of the island up to the north of the island, but there are gaps, and there are gaps in the coverage of those dots simply because they are areas either where the seals don't use the area, or they are areas where you simply can't get photographs from. Having said that, what we have been able to do is to link photographs taken away from the colony on non-breeding grounds, haulouts to the north of the island. So these are photographs taken in July of a female on a sandbank with the pattern here, and again in November when she's breeding on the island, and we got a photograph here of exactly the same pattern. So we're able to match up animals from non-breeding colonies or non-breeding haulouts to the breeding colony. We're also able to show, as Lex has already mentioned, that animals do actually move between not just adjacent, but separated colonies on the east coast of the UK. All of that's fine, it works, but as I've said, both on North Rona and on the Isle of May, the ability to get those photographs is actually limited by our accessibility to the animals themselves and the locations that they occupy on the colony. So what we've been thinking about very recently is to think about a specialised role for image acquisition, and that is to use a multicopter unmanned aerial system to allow us to get to places where we couldn't get to before to get photo ID. Now this isn't a large-scale aerial survey. It's a method that gives local access and gets us an aerial view of areas of interest. For example, haulouts where we couldn't get to normally, or hidden parts of the breeding colony. And the reason that I'm talking about multicopter applications here is simply that multicopters, like the one in the picture, offer hovering capabilities. They allow you to put the machine in one place and allow you to have fine-scale adjustment of position, which allows you to get a good image of the animal that you're actually interested in. And that's crucial to get the sort of photographs that we all need for photo ID. One of the other considerations that you can think about for UAS applications is whether the flight is flown manually or whether you follow a pre-programmed flight. And all of these options are possible. These are typical flight plans that can be programmed into the aircraft, either to do a survey of a perimeter perhaps, or to do the classic lawnmower pattern survey over to cover a particular section in a line transect type of survey pattern. These are often more appropriate for fixed-wing UAVs rather than the multicopter ones, where you have a longer endurance and you're really looking to do more of a survey-type application. So there's probably a role for that in discussions that we could have about thinking about Lake Saima, but I would also think about the multicopter options while we're here. And to show you the system that we had been using, this is it in some detail. This is the 2013 model based on a Cinesar 6, which is a 6-rotor machine. It's radio controlled. It has GPS stabilization and a return to home function. It can carry about a kilo of payload. It'll operate in winds up to about 20 miles per hour. The duration that you fly for is up to about 12 to 15 minutes. Using the high-powered LiPo batteries. And all of this has to comply with UK CAA legislation. So that's an important consideration. The way that we get the images, there are two important considerations. The first is the pilot has a view of what the GoPro sees here. This is the first camera. It's the GoPro, and the pilot has a screen on his controls where he can see what the GoPro sees. And then secondly, there's a high-resolution video camera which is controlled completely separately and is also got a first-person view screen, so the person operating the video camera can see exactly what the video camera sees. And that's independently controlled separately from the pilot. So just to give you an idea of the sort of flexibility in movement, I've got this little section of video which shows the tilting and panning of the video camera, controllable, while the aircraft is flown by the pilot. So you have complete control over where the camera is actually pointed. And these images were recorded directly underneath the machine, so don't get too clued in by the sound, because that can be quite misleading. I'm going to come on to the sound in a minute. Okay, so typically, as I've said, one of our problems is getting images from something like this, because this is a typical grey seal haul-out at the Abertay Sands. Viewed from shore, all you can see is a smear of seals. You can't make out how many animals are there, you don't know what age, sex they are, and in some cases you can't even tell what species they are, because we also have harbour seals here as well. An animal there that has a net mark on it. Let's move on swiftly. If we can get past that. On a similar flight, we were able to get images of a young female in amongst all the males in these molt haul-outs, and we were able to take a flank extract from that to get the extract to link into extract compare and compare with our database for the East Coast. In this case, there was no match with the approximately 50,000 images that we have in the East Coast database, but perhaps not surprising because she was such a young female. The other place that we've used this system is up in Loch Fleet in north of Inverness on a harbour seal colony that's the focus of a lot of work by our colleagues in the University of Aberdeen, Paul Thompson's group. And they've been very interested in looking to see if we can use UAS systems to get not just photo ID, but also to get measures of condition of the animals from the air. And we've flown a couple of sample trials, one in May and one in July. These are the sort of images that we get. This is the site, and the harbour seals are typically distributed along these sandbanks, some close to the mainland and some actually quite further away. These are images taken from two different systems. They haven't been doctored at all, but these are the raw images that you get from this one from the video and this from a stills camera. When you get really good images, they provide an awful lot of information, and you can get things like relative and absolute body size. You can also get body condition. And one of the things that we've been investigating is whether or not you can get models of animals that would allow us to get a really detailed idea of body condition. And we have a PhD student at the unit who's actually involved in producing high-resolution 3D models of seals. And that's an interesting development. One of the big things that has to be considered in all of this is the animal response to the aircraft itself. And that it turns out to be more of a consideration than you might expect. I've tried this with grey seals in two different situations. On the right is the breeding colony stuff in orange, and on the left is the molt haul-out information in blue. And along the bottom here we have a scale which represents the distance of the UAV away from the seals. So at 100 meters there's virtually no reaction to the presence of the aircraft, and as you get closer and closer the reaction increases. So we found that in fact the breeding colony animals reacted to the presence of the aircraft when it's quite low, but the reaction was simply one of slight agitation. The mums didn't go away from the pups, they simply looked up, reacted to it in that way. Whereas it was only when the aircraft was really very low and very close to the molting animals that they actually showed any real reaction at all. For harbour seals, the responses were completely different, and what we've found is that with the few trials that we've carried out, they seem to be almost aircraft specific and also time specific and perhaps even group specific. So In May we tried a quadcopter and a hexacopter, and for both of those there was very little response at about 30 or 40 metres height above the animals. But in July, when we tried a larger aircraft, an octocopter, we found that on one bank there was really quite a striking reaction, even at about 60 metres height. But on the other bank, on the same day, in the same place, there was virtually no response whatsoever, even at 30 metres height from the same aircraft. So it tends to suggest that animals have different abilities or different habituations to disturbance in any case. Just to fill in general, we also have used the aircraft in a variety of different situations. Apart from the SEAL deployments in the UK, we've also had Luke O'Connor, my co-author, use the little quadcopter in sperm whale sampling, both in the Med and in the Azores, and the purpose there was to try and sample blow from sperm whales using the quadcopter, which was partially successful. And we've also used the Sinistar up in Iceland to try and get aerial photographs of orca with Patrick Miller, which didn't really work because of weather. Weather does tend to be a consideration in this. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you to all these people and our sponsors for making the work possible. Thank you.